Digimon Adventure Last Evolution Kizuna is the last chapter of the story for the original Digimon Adventure, which includes Digimon Adventure, Digimon Adventure 02, and the 6-part Digimon Adventure tri-films. Dimsy's Domain will go through the story, the characters, the music, the art/animation, the story flow, and how effective this movie was to Digimon and non-Digimon fans. So put on your goggles, this will be a long one. Do consider subscribing, as this was a monster to write, record and edit. Turn on notifications for more Digimon content. As mentioned earlier, this is the final chapter in the original Digimon Adventure series. Well, at the time of recording anyway. This is because we have a new reboot series for Adventure called Digimon Adventure 2020, which we review every week, so do check it out. This film takes place 5 years after the final Digimon Adventure tri-film. So Tai, Matt and Sora are 22, Joe is 23, Izzy and Mimi are 21, whilst TK and Kari are both 19. So they're at that university late teens, early 20s age range, during early adulthood and truly the beginning of an independent life. Which is why for the kids who grew up watching Digimon in the late 90s, early 2000s, this film will hit you the hardest because it feels like we grew up with the original Digidestined team together. You are all either at the same stage in your life or just recently past it. You can truly relate to their mindset in this film as you'd be in your 20s right now. This was the same as saying goodbye to a friend you've grown up with, as we know the characters inside and out, their backstory, their hobbies, their family life, everything. So it connects to us who grew up with the original adventure more than one can imagine. But that doesn't mean it isn't for the non-Digimon fans as well. The story and characters were portrayed in such a way that even non-fans can take away a lot by the end of this film. You don't even need to be an anime fan. We at Dimsy's Domain have seen both subbed and dubbed, but we will focus mainly on the subbed. This is because many of the story beats are left unchanged and they use the same Japanese soundtrack on the dubbed version. So with all that underway, let's unravel the story for this film. I love the way the film starts off with Parrotmon attacking Tokyo, which is obviously one of the many callbacks to the other Digimon films. It's perfect that they're fighting Parrotmon because it's the start of the film, symbolic in a way, as it's the start of the final adventure for the Digidestined team. If you remember how Parrotmon was the first Digimon they fought in the first Digimon 1999 OVA, which started the whole story and their adventure. The action was awesome, so fast paced and energetic. I loved how Agumon was using multiple celestial arrows. We haven't seen her do that before. So these guys were displaying old school moves in a clever new way. It's like the way they updated from the Digivices to the smartphone Digivices that the team was using in this film. It's like their attacks went for an upgrade as well. Parrotmon does put up a decent fight against all of them, but he is literally a mouse in a maze being chased by the Digidestined army. On screen we see a green background with all these weird numbers. It was like we were seeing some statistics of Parrotmon. It's like in Digimon 2020 when Izzy reveals a new Digimon he's analyzing at the start of each episode. It was like that, but then we see our main guy, the leader of the Digidestined team, Taichi Yagami. He's trying to act all cool, but Parrotmon blows him away, and then we see the Digivolution sequence. Agumon digivolving into Greymon. Finally, after all these years, we get to see an updated version of the rookie to champion level sequence. Then later, we were blessed to see the evolution sequence from champion to ultimate, with Greymon digivolving into Metal Greymon. This is what I wanted and expected from Digimon Adventure Tri. Why couldn't they do this? Even Braveheart was being played whilst the sequence is happening. At the start of these sequences, we had the Digivice being replaced with the new smartphone Digivice that I'm assuming Izzy made, because in one of the scenes later on, when Tai switched off the smartphone Digivice, he had the Koshiro Izumi logo appear just before it switched off. And as we find out, Izzy has now started his own tech company and is the president of that company. You have to be a leader to be a president of a company. I'm just saying, guys. The champion to ultimate sequence updated the CGI from the original. The CGI made this sequence for me. Even the CGI back in the original, when they warped Digivolve to their megaforms, made the Digivolution sequence so awesome. But I love this new version here in Kizuna as well. The art and animation still look so crisp and tidy. On both sequences, they copied and pasted the entire thing. The way Greymon turns his head to the right of the camera as his horns turn metal. Even the explosion at the end of the sequence as he screams, "Metal Greymon," is there in the Kizuna version. So I loved how they did that. But to me, the nostalgia nostalgia is still heavy. I still prefer the original of the champion to ultimate sequence. But still, I love the Kizuna versions of the sequences. They were awesome, and I wish that they did that in Try. When Butterfly was playing, we literally saw a blue butterfly in the opening, and at the time, when watching it live, I didn't realize that Butterfly was supposed to be symbolic to our main villain of the film, Manoa, whose Digimon goes by the name of Morphomon. I just thought that they're having an actual butterfly in the Butterfly theme song. I guess it represents both the theme song and Manoa's Digimon. In the opening itself, we saw the original Digidestined team going about their daily lives without their partner Digimon, whilst TK and Kari were the only ones shown to be with their Digimon, which is a nice way of foreshadowing that the older kids' time with their partner Digimon is slowly coming to an end. That is the main theme of this film, growing up and saying goodbye to the old adventures, stories, and of course, their best friends, their partner Digimon, hence the title, Last Evolution Kizuna. As Parrotmon was again about to crush Kari and Tai, we hear Garurumon shoving Parrotmon away. Izzy was giving the coordinates for the digital gate to send Parrotmon back to the digital world. A combination of Anjumon and Anjawumon trapping Parrotmon in her celestial arrows sent him back to the digital world. I love the teamwork being displayed here. They're all seasoned professionals now. They're like superheroes, like the Avengers. Whenever a Digimon is causing havoc, send Tai and his team down there to sort it all out. When Matt made his entrance, he was having a go at Tai, and both of them were just arguing. It's hilarious because we see TK and Kari were just like, oh, here they go again. Those two have butted heads so many times now that the arguments they have won't break their friendship anymore. And they can just brush it all over and it will be a we'll agree to disagree regarding this scenario. Whereas before, it would split the Digidestined team apart. So this just shows the growth on both of these characters. Tai and Matt are now in college. Izzy, like I said previously, is running his own tech company. Mimi is starting up her own online business. Joe is doing medical studies, but it looks like he's doing more practical stuff now. We see him with a white coat taking notes whilst his teacher is demonstrating some stuff. Sora is focusing on her mum's flower shop. Even in the 6-minute Sora special, she said she wanted to leave the fighting behind, which is what ends up happening here in this film, so at least they stayed consistent with that, even though I do have my gripes with it, but I'll get into that later. One thing I need to say, it's so nice to see the characters actually doing well in life. I know Tai is struggling with college, but at least he's in college. Look at Izzy. At that age, he already has his own company and is the president of his own company, no less. I've said in our Tai vs Izzy video that Izzy grew into becoming a leader from Adventure 02 and onwards. Do you need any more evidence of that? He is the head of a company, which I'm sure has many hundreds of employees that he has to manage in their daily tasks. I love that growth. The shy, humble Izzy is now a leader of his own company. Mimi having her own online business showed that she had the smarts and she didn't just settle for her family's wealth. She wanted to do it on her own. And look what she did. She's making a name for herself. Joe and Sora, we knew the paths they were going down, but again, guys, it's just nice to see them doing well for themselves, especially after the dangers they put themselves through. They could have died so many times, it's unreal, but I guess that's why they're doing well for themselves and are on the road to success. They know how to graft, survive, and push forward. I mean, after you battle the Dark Masters, everything else in life should be easy. Tai isn't living with his parents, he has his own accommodation, and I believe he's working in an old bingo hall. I say old bingo hall because we only see old people there, so that's where I'm assuming he's working at. But he has a part-time job as well as his studies. We see Matt, who's apparently a superstar within his campus, which I'm not surprised by. I mean, he was in a band after all. Tai gives a ring and meets up with Matt for a drink. Hear what I just said, guys. They're not kids anymore. Damn, this is epic. You have Tai here basically saying he doesn't know what he's doing. He's comparing himself to the other Digidestined, saying how they know what they're doing and where they're going in life. He also said even Davis is opening up his own ramen shop. He's comparing himself to Davis. Davis was the one looking up to him back in 02. Even in this film, Davis was talking to Matt in a respectful manner, so Davis 100% still looks up to Tai. But I sympathize with Tai here because he feels he is in limbo. He's seeing his friends do well, but he's struggling in college. It's character moments like this that makes this film relatable and grounded. What Tai is feeling here, all of us can relate to. We have all had self-doubt, and seeing other people doing well whilst you might not be doing as much in comparison will get you feeling down. You're human after all. Don't get me wrong. You are happy for them and you wish them all the best, but you start to question yourself. Are you good enough? Will you ever be good enough? That's how Tai is feeling right now, and he's feeling down about it. Him feeling down about himself in Kizuna is way more understandable than in Try. Try, I don't know what the hell happened to him, but him in itself is a discussion for a future video. So subscribe and hit that notification bell to stay up to date with our content. There's a mysterious aura going around, and apparently kids all over the world are being taken to the hospital. Even in the restaurant that Tai and Matt were, we saw someone fainting. Enter Menoa Bellucci and her mysterious assistant Kiyotaro Imura, who tell them apparently there's a Digimon named Eosmon who is robbing all the international Digidestined and their partner Digimon of their consciousness. Am I the only one that finds it hilarious whenever Menoa speaks English? You almost wish she spoke English instead of Japanese this whole film. But with Menoa's help, TK, Matt, Tai and Izzy enter the internet to fight Eosmon. The four that battled Diaboromon in our war game are doing it again against Eosmon. And the battle really does remind me so much from our war game when Greymon and Kabuterimon were fighting Keramon, who then digivolved into Infamon. It was the same here, all four of them were dominating Eosmon, but then Eosmon digivolved and manhandled all of them. Especially Greymon, he took the brunt of their attacks, but it doesn't matter, because the Digidestined still had a trump card, the great one, Omnimon. Omnimon enters and does what Omnimon does. I love the gold coated aura when he enters the fight. Makes him look like he's gone Super Saiyan or something. But as we're about to see Omnimon do the final blow to Eosmon and effectively ending the film quickly, Omnimon breaks. Just like how Goku broke after he used too much energy when he went into the full Ultra Instinct form against Jiren. It was exactly the same, and we end up seeing Sunamon and Koromon. Just like how Infamon escaped using the exit button in our war game, Eosmon did the exact same thing. In this fight alone, you can see shades of our war game. Hell, I'll even go further. I'm sure you guys know that the original Digimon movie, the English dub version, had 3 movies sliced into one. All 3 of those movies have influenced this film in some way. You had the beginning with Parrotmon, some of the fight scenes inspired by the battles with Diaboromon, and the whole go back to being a child thing with Menoa, which you had with Wendingmon in the Adventure 02 film. In that film you had Tai and his team being captured. In this film you had everyone being captured. So it's really cool the way they did that. It brings it back to full circle. The Digimon series is so good with having Easter eggs and references to other plot points in the story that it's telling. Whichever Digimon series it is, even if it's a little cameo, Digimon does it so well. Menoa ends up breaking the news to Tai, Matt and the others that when you reach into your full adulthood, you reached your full potential. That is when you say goodbye to your partner Digimon. Young Jenna even confirms this as well when he meets Tai in his flat, as well as the golden ring around both Matt and Tai's Digivice, acting like the countdown for the eventual departure of Agumon and Gabumon. Menoa also said the more you make your partner Digimon digivolve, the quicker it speeds up the departure process. I like this because it makes their dilemma even more painful, because right now they are fighting the mysterious Eosmon, who is a massive threat. But then in order to fight him, Tai and Matt would have to make Agumon and Gabumon digivolve. So what do you do in that scenario? Do you fight and speed up the process? Or do you do a Sora and not fight and spend your last moments with your partner Digimon in peace? I love this. It just ups the stakes a lot more, meaning they would have to think twice about using Omnimon in battle. At this point you start to wonder, how does Menoa know all this stuff? But when she first mentioned the departure news, you feel she might have been through that pain of loss when losing a partner Digimon because of the tone she spoke in when she broke the news about it. Her assistant conveniently disappears when all this is happening, and Matt is being very suspicious of him. Matt is awesome in this film. He's basically Batman, following Kiyotaro around the dark alleyways, following him in the train. He even gets Davis and the others to try and dig up information about Menoa, but mainly Kiyotaro. Let me talk about the O2 cast quickly. I'm so happy that we at least saw them in this film. I'm not gonna lie, I had my doubts that we will even see them. I thought we would see them the way we saw Mako in this film, as one of the victims of Eosmon. But no, they actually had a mini role, all of them. After the treatment they got in Try, I'm so happy they got some recognition as part of the Digidestined team. I just wished we saw Pyldramon and Imperial Dramon in this film. But what can you do? You can't have everything. Davis still has that cheerful spark within him. He will never change. You see Tai change throughout the adventure storyline in O2 and in Try and in Kizuna as well, but Davis will never change. He will remain this cheerful even at old age, which is what I love about Davis's character. Ken looks so weird here. He looks like Cody's older brother with that bowl haircut. In the Adventure 02 epilogue, he had long hair. I preferred that design over this bowl head that he got. Or even go back to the Digimon Emperor spikes. I wouldn't mind that. I think the Digimon Emperor look was the best character design for Ken. Cody looks the same, just older. And Yoli is going through her traveler phase. She's apparently studying abroad now. In fact, she was the one that sent the email to Izzy about the whole aura phenomenon. And I think about Menoa as well, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, she looks like a typical backpacker with the baggy trousers and that top. Tai brings Agumon back to his flat, and there's a scene here which will break most people's childhood's innocence. Agumon finding Tai's hidden stash of a certain type of magazine. Bless Agumon, he does not know about this type of stuff. I can't lie, I was surprised that they had a scene like this in Digimon, but Tai is an adult now. Whatever magazines he wants to read, that's his choice. While Izzy examines Eosmon's fragments, Matt is going full Batman mode, investigating Kyotaro. After Eosmon leaves Mimi unconscious, Matt gives Tai and Izzy prepaid mobile phones out of the suspicion that they are being tracked. I swear this is something out of Ocean's 11 or something. Matt is such a boss in this film. I'll go into depth talking about the characters in the character portion of the review. Although I am disappointed that Mimi had zero impact in this film, she is one of the leaders in the team. Whenever everyone is disagreeing or needs someone to pick them up, whenever everyone is down, Mimi is the one to cheer everyone up. She's a lot like Davis in that their confident, cheerful personality will always be the same, and it's that very factor about them that makes people love them. She's my favorite female Digidestin. That's why I'm disappointed that she didn't have a major role in this film. If you guys have not seen my Mimi is underrated video, go check it out. I discuss why Mimi is one of the most important characters in the show. Matt also shows them a news article revealing that Menoa used to have a Digimon partner. As Matt continues to investigate Kyotaro, he learns from Davis's group that Kyotaro's identity is fake and Eosmon's data was found on his hard drive, concluding that he is using Menoa. Or is he? Throughout this film so far, Menoa is being portrayed as a saint, having her give the news with the departure, telling us about Eosmon. She seems too good to be true for me as I was watching it live. But still, I did not trust either of them. I feel like both of them are working together to screw over the Digidestin in some way. Izzy is sent a link to a livestream video of TK and Kari being held hostage in a Dark Knight type scenario with Harvey Dent and Rachel. This prompted Tai and Matt to rescue them, whilst Joe also goes missing. By the time they arrive, TK and Kari are already unconscious from Eosmon. On the way, Matt confronts Kyotaro. This scene was intense because we see Kyotaro with a gun, and early on in the film, when Matt was following him around, we saw him carrying a gun there as well. Digimon is no stranger to dark moments. We saw Ken back in 02 whip TK right in the face. Ken's tragic backstory with his brother being caught in a car accident. Kari almost dying as a kid when Tai was explaining to Izzy on why he gets shit scared whenever Kari becomes sick. Myotismon sucking the blood out of innocent young women. Make no mistake about it, guys, Digimon is dark. So that's why I wouldn't have been surprised if Kyotaro did turn out to be the bad guy and started shooting at Matt with his gun. Digimon is not just a show for kids. Adults can watch it as well. It's a show that has the innocence of adventure as well as the dark reality of life. It's a good mix between the two. And that is the main character dilemma that Tai is going through in this film. Not just the dilemma of the eventual departure of Agumon, but his own personal dilemma of choosing either adventure or a serious life. Again, guys, I'll go more into depth when I talk about the characters. In a twist among twists, Kyotaro reveals he is actually an undercover FBI agent investigating Menoa. With Matt learning that, he then realizes that Menoa orchestrated the kidnappings and used Eosmon as a distraction to target Izzy for the list of the international Digidestin. Realizing this as well, our little genius Izzy texts Tai with the coordinates to Menoa's location in the digital world before she renders him unconscious. Menoa being the main villain is such a good twist. This is what Maki should have been. Menoa is a mix of both Oikawa and Maki. She is tormented by the loss of her partner Digimon, just like Maki, and is also a master planner, just like Oikawa. Human villains are always better than the Digimon villains, in my opinion. They may not have the big bombastic superpowers like the Digimon, but they have their deep reasons for causing their evil acts, which makes you feel sympathy for them because you can understand where they're coming from. Ken, when he was the Emperor, thought he was in a video game, so he believed that the Digimon weren't real creatures with real emotion. You still shouldn't be a scumbag, but I can understand his trail of thought because he thought they were just gaming characters. Oikawa just wanted to go to the digital world. That was his dream. We all have dreams, so I can understand the human villain's point of view and why they're doing these horrible actions. Now it's down to Tai and Matt. This whole film is basically the Tai and Matt show, and I'm okay with that. Yes, Joe, Mimi, Sora could have been in it and had their time to shine, but this is the realism that the film demonstrates. Not everyone is available to help out, and in the case they're in now, they can't help out. From the beginning of the film, it was stated how everyone is busy with their lives and more or less gave up the Digidestined superhero lifestyle. But Matt, Tai, Kari, TK, and sometimes Izzy, when he has the time, are still fighting. That's why I don't really mind if the story is centered around Tai and Matt. They deserve the spotlight because they still want to be heroes. And with them both pushing forward, wanting to save their friends, they enter the digital world to fight Menoa and Eosmon. In the digital world, Menoa confirms that she lost her Digimon partner, Morphomon, at the tender age of just 14 and discovered Eosmon's Digi-Egg during the recent Aurora. To prevent the other Digidestined from experiencing this loss, she has captured their consciousness to allow them to be with their partner Digimon as children forever. This is so tragic. I genuinely feel bad for Menoa here. I would even go as far as saying she's not really a bad person. I see where she's coming from. Her best friend in the whole world disappears suddenly, all because she has reached her potential at an early age. That is brutal, and it's too much for a 14-year-old to take. We saw in those flashbacks when she was a kid, she lived literally in the middle of nowhere, and the other kids would pick on her and call her a weirdo. So Morphomon was her only friend. That is why I say I prefer the human villains over the Digimon villains. It's because of shit like this, man. I want to root for her. I want her to have that Oikawa moment right at the end when he ends up meeting his partner Digimon right before he died. She's a likable person, but she's going about it the wrong way. I think the Digimon departure is the most harshest way of life telling you to move on and grow up. To these Digidestined kids, they have made so many memories together with their partner Digimon. I wouldn't be surprised if they do end up going insane like Menoa here. It's tragic, but you have to move on. People go in and out of your life. The same with these Digimon, and Menoa just couldn't emotionally move on from the pain of loss. I think this is the perfect villain for Tai and Matt. And in my opinion, she's not really a villain. She's a tragedy, and I sympathize with her. But she is what Tai and Matt needed to see in order for them to move on from the Digidestined lifestyle. Because the others in the team clearly have, but these two fully haven't. They needed to see what not moving on from the loss of your Digimon partner does to a person firsthand. And they saw Menoa just crumbling right in front of them. They don't want to be like her in the future, so this is the perfect antagonist for these two characters. Menoa sends a swarm of Eosmon clones to the real world to kidnap more Digidestined, sparking battles worldwide. We see Davis and his team fighting the Eosmon clones, whilst in the digital world we have Menoa being surrounded by all the Digidestined's consciousness that she kidnapped there, all return to the old school season 1 clones. Tai, Matt and their Digimon resolve to stop Menoa even if it quickens their separation, and Agumon and Gabumon DNA digivolve into Omnimon to fight her and the Eosmon clones. After Menoa falling into complete insanity, I mean, look at her eyes, you would think she's possessed. Fuses with Eosmon. Eosmon cuts Omnimon into pieces, causing it to split again. Tai and Matt are assaulted by the Digidestined and their Digimon partners, but Tai grabs Kari's iconic whistle and blows into it, awakening and turning them back to normal. That whistle is the real MVP of Digimon. While the Digidestined and their Digimon partners join the battle, Tai and Matt are a little shaken with what's happening, and especially now with the time limit on the brink of them and their partner Digimon, it's understandable why they're so hesitant. Gabumon and Agumon give them the final push that they needed, and Agumon says one of the best lines you will ever hear in Digimon. He told them both that even though their friendship is about to come to an end, he was grateful to at least see Tai growing up into an adult. That's epic, man. I love that line. Agumon is a reminder to always be grateful, and this sentence is the meaning of gratefulness. He managed to see his best friend grow from boy to a man. This then gives them the motivation for one final evolution, forming Agumon, Bond of Courage mode, and Gabumon, Bond of Friendship. I do like the design, but I do feel Gabumon's version looks a bit too human. Agumon's version still had the orange skin, but Gabumon's skin was all white, so that's my little gripe with Gabumon's Bond of Friendship mode. But it still looks badass, so don't get me wrong, I still do like the design. The two appeared speed blitz all of Eosmon's attacks and shields, decimating the Eosmon clones with their special attacks coming from their fists. They corner Eosmon, Tai screams at Matt for them to end the fight and this nightmare with a punch made from the last evolution, killing Eosmon. But right before they fully kill Eosmon for good, this is one of those tragic scenes where you see the lonely life of a genius. I don't know if you guys watched Beyblade G Revolution, but there's a character in that show, his name is Brooklyn. He is also a genius in Beyblading, just like how Manoa is a genius in Digimon. They both had that scene where the main character has a vision of their past and sees firsthand how lonely and dark it can be. That is the cost of being a genius at that age. For Brooklyn's case, no one wanted to play with him because he always wins, and with Manoa, she's too smart for everyone else. That's why people call her weird. This scene was hard to watch because after watching this, I can't hate Manoa at all. She went full on babyface for me after this move the film just did. She was crying inside the whole time, very similar to Matt back in season 1 when he admitted to Gabumon all he wanted to do was cry. Give credit to Digimon. Despite it being a show with monsters with mystical powers, demons and angels, and all sorts of fantasy stuff, it's the real world human emotion as well as problems, whether they are traumatic, dark, or even small insecurities. These human problems are the driving force of this series in a narrative perspective. It's never been about the battles, although I do love a good fight scene or intricate storytelling of a long-running shonen anime like a One Piece for example. With Digimon, both the human and the Digimon, whether they are the villains or the good guys, it's always been about the characters, how they overcome the dangers of the digital world and how they overcome the human problems in the real world. It's so surreal. I'll use Izzy as an example. In the first season, the Dish Destined literally go through hell, fighting Devimon at the start, with then Etamon in the desert, Myodasmon in the real world, and the 4 Dark Masters, and countless mini adventures that could have resulted in death. They were lost in the desert and had to fish for survival, with the Seadramon lurking in the background, got chased underwater with Waymon saving them, got separated by a demon. These are just a few examples. You have all of this madness going on in the digital world, and then in the real world, you have Izzy having issues with his family, with him having a difficult time learning that his parents are not actually his parents, and that creates a divide between him and his foster parents. This is what I'm talking about with Digimon. You can have both the extravagant adventure as well as problems that the viewer can also relate to. This is the amazing thing about Digimon, and they did it perfectly here with Manoa. She needed someone to save her, and Tai and Matt were the ones to do it. Matt says to her she didn't make the wrong choice. I love the fact that Matt said this because he himself knows you can make wrong choices, but these choices can help you grow as a person. It's like he was talking to Sora when Sora was in the Cave of Darkness. After the battle, Kiyotaro arrests Manoa. Tai and Matt spend their remaining time with Agumon and Gabumon respectively until they suddenly vanish in a complete silence and their digivices turn into stone. This was chilling. The last 10 minutes of this film was deep, and it was Digimon at its very best. I do like that both Agumon and Gabumon just disappear suddenly rather than the epic farewell, because they're all adventurers. Their farewell was the fight with Eosmon. They went out fighting. Is there a better way of them saying goodbye? In the following spring, the two move on with their lives and pursue their dream careers, under the belief that they may see their Digimon partners again in the future. I mean, as far as I'm aware, the Adventure 02 epilogue is still canon, and we see all the partner Digimon with Tai and his team when they're all adults with kids of their own. So I'm a little bit confused with that. Guys, if you have the answers, please comment down below how the Adventure 02 epilogue and the ending of Kizuna connects. And we still don't know if the absence of their partner Digimon would still not affect them in a negative way. It's still an open-ended ending. So Tai and Matt could possibly turn into a Manoa down the line, but we don't know that for sure.
The English dub for this film was surprisingly brave. They reused and recycled many of the musical beats from the Japanese film in this adaptation, and that allowed a lot of the story beats to transition seamlessly from the Japanese to the English. Also, there was very little changes, very little differences from the script to the English dialogue. This was a great, genuine and realistic adaptation for this film, and very much something to be applauded about, because Digimon has always been a bit of a weird one with the adaptation in the English doing its own thing in terms of they had their own opening, or they had their own music, or they had major script changes. So it's a breath of fresh air hearing the English dub actors with Butterfly and Braveheart. It was actually quite surreal if you think about it. This is probably where you might start hating me, but I sincerely ask you lot to hear me out, and if you lot don't like it or disagree, I respect that. Comment down below, I would love to hear your thoughts. Jeff Nimoy, a couple of months ago in our podcast with him, said how much he wanted to be part of the writing team and he wanted to direct this film, and he wasn't. He was just an actor for this film, and his absence was quite noticeable. Now, if you watch Digimon from the English dub, compare it to the original Japanese, it's a different show. It's a completely different show. They inserted so much more comedy in the English dub, and it really does lose a lot of its tone that you'd see in the original Japanese version. Is that good? Is that bad? Most likely it's more bad than it is good, but it's still nostalgic because this movie was hitting home all the nostalgia, so it's kind of weird. But it was still nice seeing Butterfly, Braveheart with the English dub cast, and I think that the majority of the cast were absolutely stellar, but I can't ignore the fact that the change in voice personnel was a bit jarring to me. For example, the new voices of Matt, Gabumon and Davis just didn't do it for me. Now, I understand that this was recorded at the height of a worldwide health pandemic. For that reason, not all of the voice actors were able to reprise their roles. For example, Brian Donovan was not able to reprise his role as Davis, and I have to take that into mind, but it doesn't take away from my experience of this film. I didn't get my full dose of nostalgia. It's a bit weird. Now guys, I understand they wanted to keep this as genuine as possible for an adaptation of this film, but I felt like there was a lack of bravery, or maybe this was a conscious decision in terms of audio mixing. But there's one scene in particular which I absolutely loved miles and miles better in the Japanese version compared to the dub, and that's when we had Tai, Matt, Gabumon and Agumon all shout in unison how this is their final evolution. In the Japanese version, you could hear them very clearly and it was very powerful, but it lost its power, it lost its sense of urgency in the dub, because I heard Gabumon and Agumon more than Tai and Matt. Again, this could have been a conscious decision because this was the final evolution for the Digimon, but metaphorically, this was also the final evolution for the Digidestined, for the children, for Tai and Matt to become young adults. I just wanted to hear Matt and Tai being as vocal or being more pronounced in this unison final evolution shout as they were in the dub, like how they were in the Japanese version. Unfortunately, we didn't get that. Maybe again, it was the audio mixing. I thought that a lot of the times when it came to the shouting or when it came to the actual sense of urgency parts of this film, it just was lacking. I don't know. Is it just me, or maybe am I being too picky? I did watch the Japanese dub and the English dub back to back, so maybe there is that. Maybe there's a sense of bias. I actually prefer the English dub, and that's what pissed me off the most. Regardless, I can't complain. This was a great, genuine adaptation, and still, it doesn't take from the fact that this English dub version of this film was great, and I strongly recommend everyone and anyone, if you want some level of nostalgia, check this out. You need to check out this film, especially in the sub, but also check it out in the dub because it's not half bad.
Now let's talk about the characters, starting with, and considering this film heavily focused on Matt and Tai, I will be mainly talking about them in this portion of the review. Let's talk about Matt first. Matt was awesome from start to finish. He became Tai's equal in this film. I didn't feel there was a rivalry at all between himself and Tai. It felt more like a brotherhood than anything else. He was like an undercover agent in this film, going after Kiyotaro in the manner that he did. He was very proactive and took matters into his own hands, much like a worthy leader, something that we didn't see him do before or much of in previous seasons of the Digimon Adventure story. I will be releasing a Matt is overrated video very soon, so stay tuned for that, guys. But when I was making notes for that video, I realized that Matt ended up having the best character development out of anyone in the whole show. Only Mimi would probably be the only one to rival the development that Matt had. Matt went from rival from at the beginning of the Digimon Adventure series to being a leader by the end of Kizuna. He literally is Vegeta to Tai's Goku. He's way more friendly with Tai in this film and doesn't judge Tai's every single move or sentence, unlike in Tri, where it seemed like he was observing and analyzing every move of Tai. Here, he was way more relaxed. Season 1, he was the rival with Tai. Season 2, we didn't really see much of the original cast as much, but in Tri, he grew to be a leader, to be more vocal and give the team the pep talk whenever they needed it, to give Tai his vote of confidence, which he desperately needed, especially in the Tri films. And let's be real guys, I know right at the end it was still Tai's call to kill Makoman off when she DNA digivolved with Ofaniman fall down mode to become Ordinaman, which cemented that Tai is still the leader and Matt is the number 2, but throughout those films he became the leader, or at least starting to grow his leadership skills. I'll go more into depth with that in the Matt character video when it's released. I'll explain his development from season 1 all the way up to Kizuna, but the main point being is his journey to eventually be a leader. And in Tri, as much as he was taking charge, he still ended up being the number 2. However, in this film, he doesn't feel like a number 2. For the first time ever in the original Digimon Adventure storyline, Matt feels like he is equal to Tai in terms of leadership. Tai doesn't know what the hell he's doing or what direction his life is going, so he then decides to go to Matt for advice. Tai respects Matt enough that he would want his honest opinion of him from Matt. Tai is not usually like that. The only other person he would lay his guard down is with his Digimon partner, Agumon. It always felt like Matt was in Tai's shadow throughout the adventure storyline, just like how Vegeta was always in Goku's shadow in Dragon Ball Z. His journey is to finally come out of Tai's shadow and be his equal, and I feel he has finally accomplished that in this film. Tai, in all honesty, didn't do so much in this film. Matt basically did everything. He got the prepaid phones, he got Davis and his team to dig information on Menoa and Kyotaro, was the one that figured out that Menoa's main target was Izzy. Matt was on fire in this film. If you didn't like Matt before, you will love him in this film. For me, he outshined Tai this whole film. Guys, you have to understand why it's such a big deal that Matt is not in Tai's shadow anymore. Remember back in the original, he was always jealous of Tai. He wished he was like Tai. His jealousy raged even more when he thought TK preferred Tai over himself, to the point where he was attacking Tai in the Dark Master saga. In Tri, I feel he might have thought that he could do a better job as a leader than Tai. Look how quickly he would get angry at Tai and start making decisions as if he was the leader. He was like a reluctant follower. He knew deep inside that Tai had the final say, but he still tried his best to be a leader somewhat. But clearly he was still the number 2. But in this film, the biggest evidence that you need that Matt is not in Tai's shadow anymore is the scene where they save Menoa right at the end. It was both of them giving the pep talk, and if anything, it was when Matt said to Menoa that life isn't preordained. That was the line that woke Menoa up out of a mad depression. Normally, it would be the main leader giving that killer magic line, but here it was Matt who did it, signaling to us that he is also a leader of the Digidestined team and will be a leader throughout the rest of his life, whether he is in a band or an astronaut in space. That's my take on Matt. If you guys have any opinions on Matt's character, please comment down below. I would love to have a debate with you guys down in the comments. Now let's talk about Tai, our main guy, the original Gogglehead. Tai in this film, and you can say in Tri as well, is having a crisis within himself. He is confused. He doesn't know what the hell he's doing in life. But this film highlighted that main inner struggle he has been dealing with all this time, and that is to keep having adventures and carrying on being a hero, or start thinking about a serious life. And what I mean by serious life is the whole thinking about his career options and growing out of the Digidestined superhero lifestyle, which I feel in that world is one of the most important jobs you can do. You're literally saving the world from killer monsters. But as the whole new rule of adults not being allowed to be with their Digimon partners going into the adulthood stage of their lives, that is the reason why he would have to become serious, because he can't do this forever. You can see it throughout this film. Every time when a new mission begins, Tai is the first one to lead the pack. You can see his demeanor change. It's like his eyes light up with the prospect of a new adventure. Look at Menoa right when she got first introduced. She talked about the mission on attacking Eosmon in the internet. Tai was on that straight away. He was telling the others, let's go, let's do this new mission. He didn't hesitate. This was happening throughout the film. It's like he's running away from reality when he's going into the digital world or in the internet world and doing these missions. He's been doing this since he was 11. This is his life. I bet you, if he could somehow make a job role and career path with being a hero, even if it's for free, he would still do it. He doesn't want a normal job. He wants to have adventures and help people. Look at the bar scene with him and Matt. He was the first one to help out that girl when she collapsed. For me, Ty's character suffered the most in Digimon Adventure Tri. That for me was not Ty. He redeemed himself by the end, but I just feel the character arc he was going through in Tri was really unnecessary. Whereas here, the struggles he's facing is both realistic and doesn't dampen our enjoyment of him as a character. He's not depressing here. He's actually quite funny. Whereas in Tri, he was so depressing and lacked any motivation. This Ty is the real Ty. He's facing more problems because, as we all know, once you're in the adult life, you will only have stacks and stacks of problems. It's not all easy anymore like it was when you were a kid. Ty's best scene for me in this film is when Izzy gets kidnapped by Manoa and it's just him and Matt in Izzy's office. And they're both screaming and are in a mass panic because time is running out with their partner Digimon, as well as all the Digidestined, including the international Digidestined, are in danger. So the pressure's on. Matt says to Tai, if we evolve our Digimon, our time with Gabumon and Agumon will run out. It was like he was trying to tell Tai, look, we don't have much time left with Gabumon and Agumon. It's horrible and he wishes there was another way, but there's barely any time left. Emotions are high and the pressure is on. So I don't even blame Matt for being so hesitant at this point. But Tai was like, that doesn't matter now. We have to save them all. As much as I said Matt is an equal to Tai in this film, and he still is, there's still that little bit in Matt. In the hardest and darkest moments, he still looks for Tai for inspiration and looks up to him on what to do when they're at their lowest. This is Tai at his best. He knows Agumon will be gone forever, but he has to do it in order to save his little sister and his friends that he grew up with, as well as all those Digidestined from around the world. This is the quality of a leader, despite all the bullshit that people have been saying to him throughout this film, like, how are you going to graduate college? Are you even going to get a decent grade or even a job? Tai himself is comparing how he is doing to everyone else. He feels like shit that he's not doing enough. If anything, it's in this film where you wouldn't blame Tai for being depressed rather than in Tri. I wouldn't blame Tai if his confidence is down at the bottom of the barrel, but in that moment where he convinced Matt to come with him to the distal world, that took bravery, because he's essentially sacrificing his best friend to save everyone. Matt didn't want to do it. He was very reluctant to go. It's only when Tai said, we have to do this, only then Matt went along with it. Like I said earlier, Manoa was the perfect villain for both of them. If not for her, I think Tai would still be thinking on how to escape into another adventure in the digital world, rather than focus on his life goals and looking ahead to the future. This was the wake-up call that Tai needed, and the sheer belief that he will one day see Agumon again pushed him to move on from the hero life. I think him believing of one day seeing him again, he wouldn't want Agumon to see him after all these years as a failure in life. He would want Agumon to see him successful in whatever career path he has chosen, or just in general in life. That is what I feel is giving Tai even more motivation to succeed and to leave the adventures behind him. Agumon said to him he is grateful to see him grow up into an adult. I think we can all agree with Agumon. We have all grown up with these characters. It's amazing to see them actually grow up into adults. We were kids when they were kids, and now they're adults when we are also adults. I want to see them succeed and be happy. That's why Tri pissed me off so much. Why did they do that to Tai's character? They butchered him, but here he's back to his very best. The others we didn't see much of really. We saw bits of Izzy. It's nothing new. Izzy was just being his genius self. Now let's get on to Sora. I was so disappointed with Sora in this film. Now, I know in the 6-minute Sora preview, she said she gave up the fighting, but still, everyone is in danger. Tai, your childhood friend, is in danger. Matt, the guy you have been going out with, is also in danger. What's going on? Why aren't you not helping these two out? She just sat by her window with Biyomon. I'm sure even Biyomon said, shouldn't we be helping them out? Sora was a major disappointment. The Sora from back in season 1, the girl that made sure everyone was safe, this is not that Sora. I don't care if she doesn't want to fight anymore. Mimi said that in season 1 when too many of their Digimon friends were dying. Mimi didn't want to fight anymore. But guess what? Leomon died sacrificing himself in order to save Mimi and Joe from Metroletamon. Both of the worlds would have been in danger if the Dark Masters win, and then she decided to fight. Mimi was only 10 years old at that time. Sora here is 22. What's her excuse? Yes, I know that the timer will run out quicker if Biyomon digivolves, but still, you failed your friends. I kept calling you the mother figure of the team. She failed them all with this selfish decision. She should have let Biyomon fight at least once and then be like, no, we fought once already. I don't want to lose you quickly in a fight where we might not even win. That would have been more understandable, but it is what it is. The O2 cast were literally cameos, so there's not much to say other than what I've already said in the story segment of the review. This film was the Matt and Ty show, so it makes sense for me to talk about them more than anyone else.
Much of the soundtrack of this film was an homage to previous famous adventure soundtracks. Of course, Braveheart and Butterfly were done beautifully by the late great Wado Koji. Looking back at this movie retrospectively, I have an even stronger feeling that Butterfly should never ever be used again. It should be retired in honor of Wado Koji. I understood the use of Butterfly. Of course, it's an iconic track, but any more usage of Butterfly in latter Digimon properties will be overusing this masterpiece. Retire the song alongside this iteration of Digimon Adventure and cement this man's legacy and how much this song has traversed media and pop culture. As stated earlier, Digimon Last Evolution Kizuna is an homage machine while still keeping it fresh and in line with the Digimon and the Digidestin in this time period. The use of the French composer Maurice Ravel's most famous work, Bolero, was perfectly executed. Bolero was the soundtrack used in the first Digimon Adventure movie, whereby Agumon evolved into Greymon against Parrotmon. Another rendition was used during the intro of the much beloved Our Wargame movie. Again, it was used during the intro of the movie Diaboromon Strikes Back before being used again in Digimon Adventure series, where Koromon attacked the illusion Agumon in the fake Odaiba in episode 21, and of course during the Tai Agumon training sequence with Piximon in the Digimon Adventure series. The point is the Bolero track is iconic, and iconic specific to Digimon. Do bear in mind, this was composed in 1928. I was very surprised they didn't even use this in Digimon Adventure Tri. So when this was used during the opening sequence of Kizuna as they fought off Parrotmon in the real world, it was phenomenal. The playful feel of Bolero meshes so well with everything the Digimon represent to these children or young adults right now. The purpose of Maurice Ravel's Bolero was the use of repetition throughout the track that slowly increases in tempo and orchestral presence to hit home, and increased use of urgency and the sense of nearing its climax. This track is the ultimate build-up song. However, in Kizuna, they are using it to showcase how the threat of Parrotmon is easily dealt with by the Digidestin. So instead of Bolero being used to show the build-up to the narrative unfolding, it is being used to remind us of how much the Digidestin have developed. This is further reinforced by all the nostalgia bombs the viewer is dealt with because we are so familiar with this song within Digimon. A perfect way to reintroduce Digimon on the big silver screen, and there is no better way than listening to some Bolero. The seamless transition from the Bolero soundtrack to the even more nostalgia-inducing Braveheart was made more effective due to how it was primarily used for Agumon's Digivolution to Greymon to fight off Parrotmon. Nostalgia is further increased by reworking the old school 1999 Digimon Adventure series Digivolution animation for Agumon to Greymon and then Greymon to Metal Greymon. The extended take of Braveheart with the homage-filled scenes that accompanied it made the first 9 minutes the ultimate hook to any Digimon fan. From the soundtrack alone, you are hooked. That's not even taking into account the great action sequences that we saw on the screen. It was like a slow crescendo of nostalgia bubbling up with Bolero to Braveheart in the opening 9 minutes. The viewer was probably plastered with a massive proud grin during those 9 minutes, because I was. As the score calmed down, we, the viewer, also took a rest, as we have to digest what we just saw and seemingly admire the Digidestined and what they have in store for us and what they actually achieved and how much they've grown from this 9 minutes, again induced by this soundtrack. We had a solid 1 minute of rest before boom, on the 10th minute mark we get Butterfly. We had 3 scores that epitomized Digimon through and through. Although Bolero is not as popular, Braveheart and Butterfly sure are. They're as Digimon as you can get. Braveheart and Butterfly are Wado Koji's masterpieces. As mentioned earlier, it is right for this movie to retire those famous soundtracks, since this movie served as the final hurrah for many of the Digidestined from the original season, and hopefully they also do the same for these famous 2 soundtracks, forever immortalizing them alongside the Digidestined that we grew up to love. And look, I would like to believe that Butterfly felt even more iconic because, as we learn throughout the story, Eosmon resembles some form of a butterfly. The beauty of a butterfly was showcased in more ways than one in this movie, symbolically as the most memorable song associated to Digimon. As Butterfly played during the opening montage to formally introduce us to the movie, it was literally the only song that can truly complement the scenes of the Digidestined on the screen. We see the Digidestined grown up, and it was the song Butterfly that accompanies this growth in our minds and hearts. This was the final time we heard Butterfly, and I found it very interesting that in this opening montage we see none of the original Digidestined alongside their partners except TK and Kari. Compare that to the original 1999 series opening, which showed the kids being flung into an unknown world and showcasing their Digimon and the digital world. Compare it to Digimon Tri, which still showed us the Digidestined alongside their partner Digimon, but they're in the real world and in high school uniforms, and there are some action sequences of the champion level forms spliced between. However, for the opening of Kizuna, we see the Digidestined, these young adults going about their life, from learning their profession to attending classes. It takes a more somber and relaxed approach rather than the chaotic journey to the unknown world we saw in the original 1999 opening. We can all agree that the visuals for for the opening were trash. I don't care. It was shit. It should have been better. Well, anyway, that's my personal opinion. Nonetheless, we don't have to all agree, but I agree. If I look back at the Butterfly opening of Kizuna after watching this film, I appreciate all these little quirks more and more. It's as if that they were preparing us for this bittersweet ending right from the beginning. The lack of Digimon alongside these young adults as they kickstart their lives. Dare I say it without sounding corny, but this opening showcased how these kids have emerged from this cocoon of childhood by opening up and showcasing unique personality traits and growth similar to the unique pattern seen on the wings of a butterfly. This film largely utilizes silence and background noise perfectly to translate the tone, again, perfectly. I adored how when Ty and Matt were drinking up, they used the background music within the restaurant or pub to add depth and realism, since we are still digesting the fact that they're young adults who live lives of a student or just trying to navigate this world and this life with really very little clue on how to do it. It's just so relatable, and I know it because I've been there before. I've been in both their situations before. I understand them. The upbeat, mysterious and techno beat that plays when Eosmon is revealed to be an unidentified Digimon starts to set the tone for the mystery aspect of this film really, really well. When you look at how they use the score during the fights in the world where Eosmon and Manoa are, it leaned more towards the operatic and orchestral side. That works so well because it literally was resembling a tragic Shakespearean play with how the narrative was unfolding. We had Manoa falling deeper and deeper into this madness. Oh my god, I had such Macbeth feels. They could have easily made that a stage play. It felt grand, and the booming backdrop with the sweet violin complemented it perfectly. They stepped it up a notch with the operatic voice to add a more eerie, all hope is lost feeling when Eosmon merged with Manoa. It was menacing, scary, but what's more surprising was that it was beautiful, aesthetic and marvelous. Look at the visuals in that space Manoa made. The floating crystal islands were exquisite exquisite to look at, but with the sky and ground so plain, it gave a strong feeling of absolute loneliness. Such beauty and such emptiness at the same time. This is why the sequence and that score really did make it feel like a tragic Shakespearean play, which translated well. Again, all because of the score. But that is why the inset song Sono Saki E by Ayumi Miyazaki was so effective. It contrasted so well against the previously established cold, orchestral, tragic soundtrack. When the song started playing, regardless of the epic visuals of the new Digivolution from their last evolution, if you look at how effective this song, just the audio, the standalone piece of the audio, it was magnificent. The song slowed down the pace and added a sense of warmth and comfort. When Miyazaki started singing, it was as if they're serenading the viewer and again adding warmth to the scene. The film and the viewer, it needed that warmth because they were trapped in a cold, lonely place. It personified the heartfelt and the pure bond between a Digidestined and their Digimon. As the chorus kicked in, the climax of the epic battle rolled by. It felt, again, epic. The destruction of Eosmon and this cold goddess Digimon in this crystallized kingdom felt so satisfying. Without wanting to keep on repeating myself, this song injected hope and warmth to a previously established cold and hopeless scene. What a way to end this battle. If Digimon hasn't made you cry yet, I can assure you that there's tears of joy or something was streaming down your cheeks. Easily one of the best moments in Digimon history, and it was all due to how the music was understood by the visuals to telegraph a passionate message of hope to the viewer and to the Digidestined. It was mentioned earlier how Digimon Last Evolution Kizuna used the background noise very effectively. Nothing was more effective than the final scene where Matt plays the harmonica before the Digimon disappear, leaving only the tears and cries of Tai and Matt to fill our ears. Again, if you weren't crying before, you would now. You should be now. The use of the harmonica always triggers a tone of calmness and retrospective thinking. To us, it just does that. It's even more nostalgic because of Matt's history with the harmonica. But having the Digimon ask, "What will you do tomorrow?" before the sound of the wind calms to a deafening silence as the young adults ponder that question, only to answer to a disappeared Digimon. It was heartbreaking and it broke their heart as they emphasized the cries of the two iconic characters. This was arguably the best strength of Digimon Last Evolution Kizuna, how they foreshadowed and masterfully played with our emotions. They skillfully utilized nostalgia to hit home, a phenomenal piece of audio mastery. The character designs were a huge change from Digimon Tri, which in my opinion really did miss the mark with the human designs especially. Where Tri had quite generic faces for the humans, Digimon Last Evolution Kizuna were filled with expressions in their character designs. Now let's remember, the original designs for the humans in Digimon Adventure in 1999 and heck even in 02 were not very mind-blowing. It seems like the faces were all very similar and they were just given a different hair or eye color to differentiate them, like those dress me up dolls or whatever you call it. One thing with Tri was that the Digimon designs looked so good. However, they stood out in comparison to the bland background and bland human designs. That's just my opinion. With Digimon Last Evolution Kizuna, I feel that the designs for the Digimon and the humans were exquisite and there was no real disconnect between the two. You put the Digimon and the human characters side by side and they look like they're from the same movie. I can't say the same for Tri. Also, the backgrounds in Kizuna were filled with detail and small nuances to let you know this is the location, and it just gave you more information than you may think. The fluidity of the animation was mesmerizingly good, but that's because we had legends working on this. For example, we had Hiroyuki Yamashita, who is one of Naruto's biggest stars, and he did huge chunks of the finale. This is the best that Digimon has ever looked, and it felt worthy of being on the big silver screen on the cinema world before COVID-19 hit. I noticed how it felt like the characters had a slight golden tint to them, as if they were being filmed in the sunset or the twilight hours of the day. Again, the golden hour, when clearly wasn't. This was from the opening 10 minutes, but perhaps this was just a technique to accentuate the new character designs, as they are a massive change from Tri. Also, it could be a way to showcase the dramatic shadows that were forming to highlight the new designs further, as well as to showcase these characters in all of their glory. The coloring in this film was very smooth. Everything felt smooth, simple yet elegant. There was a great attention to detail as the backgrounds were popping up with DL. This was important because we had various scenes throughout the world courtesy of the digital gates, so they really had to make sure the backgrounds tell the viewer where the locations are without overly relying on the dialogue to explicitly state so. There are many examples of great attention to detail in the background, such as when the O2 cast were hunting for information, to the simplicity of Ty's apartment. They really explored their color palette by having scenes in the blaring outdoor sunlight, indoor offices, bedrooms, the rainy nights, and then the dodgy glowy world that Manoa created. They truly did flex their color muscles in this movie. It seemed like they were having a ball of a time since they could explore the majority of the film in the real world. Usually the bulk of a Digimon film or a Digimon episode tends to occur in the digital world, where they have exaggerated architecture or an unrealistic cyberspace, which is what we saw when they tried to capture Eosmon initially. So that was them showcasing that feature or that hallmark of Digimon. I would say that this movie started off very soft with various saturated or flushed colors to match the settings as mentioned earlier. However, it is in the world where Manoa created where they shifted from simple and soft to vibrant and exaggerated and very sharp. The way the crystals refracted and reflected the light and the lack of background really visualized and personified the flaw of Manoa's thinking. Manoa wanted to create a beautiful world where Digidestined can be forever with their Digimon, but when you look further out there is nothing, because everything is fake. The lack of a detailed background in this pseudo space represented this perfectly. The great detail to that corrupt goddess Digimon and the array of color in the wings was designed masterfully. I can't fault the fight scenes since they were so dynamic, smooth and all round exquisite. This truly was a visual masterpiece on Digimon's end, and it was a fitting end, a fitting final goodbye between Matt with Gabumon and Tai with Agumon to be made during the sunset, representing the closure of a major chapter in both their lives. How the breeze moved their hair as they cried uncontrollably with tears leaking through their eyes. Digimon Last Evolution Kizuna's visuals moved us to tears as we all smiled. If you look at the flow of the story in this film as a whole, on the surface it can be seen as a basic shonen story. Bad guy suddenly appears, they're defeated and we're all happy again. But are we really happy again? Do things really go back to normal after defeating Eosmon? Is Tai and Matt really better off by the end of this film? To try and answer this, we have to look at the late novelist Kurt Vonnegut. He stated in his Shape of Stories theory that stories can be visually represented by plotting the good/ill fortunes on the y-axis against the story time on the x-axis. He theorized there are at least 8 fundamental shapes stories can take. I personally believe that this story shape of Digimon Adventure Last Evolution Kizuna is which way is up. This story, this shape states how the story has a lifelike ambiguity, meaning that we really don't know if the new developments from the story are good or they're bad. Although they stopped Manoa, which saved the Digidestined from an eternal trance, it meant that for Tai and for Matt, who the film is centered around, they had to say goodbye to their partner Digimon. We don't know how it's going to affect their mental health or their situation. Assuming the famous O2 epilogue is going to be retconned, or even if stuff is going to happen in that gap, how do we know that Tai or Matt don't become a Manoa 2.0? How do we know that Tai or Matt are able to reconnect the old Digidestined to their old Digimon partners? We just don't know, because we don't have the benefit of hindsight here. Building on the Shape of Stories is the look at the character arcs of Tai and Matt and what they went through in this film. The novelist K.M. Weiland, in her book Creating Character Arcs, said there are 5 basic character arcs. 2 of those 5 are truth/heroic and 3 are lie/negative. Depending on your interpretation, both Tai and Matt either went through a heroic arc or a negative arc. The heroic arc is the positive change arc, whereby a character believes in a lie. In this case, Tai and Matt both believe the lie that they're going to be with their Digimon for as long as they live. The character then overcomes the lie by coming to terms with the truth. In this movie, they learn the truth through Manoa and Genai. They battle and defeat the villain to further come to terms with the truth and how real it is. The positive change arc finishes by learning the new truth as liberating and opens up new possibilities. It can be argued that knowing Agumon and Gabumon are gone forever allows Tai and Matt to really utilize their potential by pursuing whatever they wish in this world. They may have had more difficulties with their Digimon around to achieve their dreams, especially in the real world. You can't be as successful as a typical person would be with a small dinosaur following you around, can you? As they say in the film, the kids change physically and mentally, but the Digimon always stay the same. Are the Digimon hindering the children's evolution to adults? So would it be liberating if they are permanently departed from their Digimon partners? I don't know about that. That's a bit weird because that's a fundamental fact of growing up. But anyway, the negative arc is also known as the disillusionment arc. This is where the character believes in a lie. In this case, the Digidestined believe they're going to be with their Digimon forever, but they overcome the lie, similar to before. Instead of the new truth being liberating like the positive change arc, the new truth in the disillusionment arc is tragic. As mentioned earlier, we just don't know whether losing their Digimon is good or bad for Tai and Matt in the long run. Manoa went through this character arc, and that's how she became crazy. Heck, Manoa went through what the author K.M. Weiland would describe as a fall arc, where Manoa believes a lie, she clings to the lie, and when she learns the truth, she rejects the truth and goes worse, and eventually becomes even more crazy. Could we see that with Tai and Matt? I don't know. Thus you have Manoa falling into her darkness. After looking at the shape of the story as well as the character arcs Tai, Matt and Manoa went through, I can assure you that Digimon Adventure Last Evolution Kizuna is anything but a straightforward story. When you add up the weight of Digimon Adventure's legacy, adding on layers upon layers to the story and characters, yes, look, not all characters got the same treatment as Tai and Matt, but when you add all the factors and the legacy surrounding Tai and Matt, I can say with certainty that the shape of their story and their character arcs are as uniquely simple and complex as the wings of a butterfly.
Overall, this film was the perfect way to end the original adventure storyline. It gives a more hopeful ending, like maybe one day the Digidestined will reunite with their partner Digimon once again. With the Adventure 02 epilogue showing them with their partner Digimon, they actually might do so. It's open-ended for all of us, so if you believe they do reunite with their partner Digimon, you can believe that. If you think this was the perfect goodbye between the Digidestined and their partner Digimon, you can have that ending as well. I loved where Matt and Tai's character went in this film. These two characters are the main heroes of the Digidestined team. Not having these two characters have the final say in the final chapter of the original adventure storyline feels criminal. In Adventure 02, you had adult TK narrate the ending of Adventure 02, and we had that ending for well over a decade with no new Digimon Adventure content. As much as I love TK, having him conclude at that time anyway, before trying Kizuna, the final moments of the adventure storyline felt so random. He didn't really do much since the original Digimon Adventure, whilst Tai and Matt, despite not having massive roles in 02, still have that presence, and every time they're on screen, they capture the audience's attention and take away the spotlight from the 02 cast. Because we all know the true main characters and the icons of the Digimon Adventure franchise are Tai and Matt. Digimon Adventure Tri ruined Tai's reputation as a character for me. He wasn't the charismatic, fearless leader that we all expected. However, Matt was the one outshining Tai in Digimon Adventure Tri. But if those movies were the finale of the original adventure storyline, then for me, the adventure storyline went out on a whimper. You need to have both Tai and Matt shine and be at their very best for it to be a real conclusion. These two characters have had their ups and downs, but in order to end the series with these two, and rightfully so with these two characters specifically, they have to reach the pinnacle of their character development. So it will give us, the audience, the confidence to know that these two characters can now truly move on with their lives. We can see that they have the capabilities of moving on, but we still don't know whether they will turn into Manoa 2.0, so it leaves that open-ended as well. And speaking of Manoa, I loved Manoa as a villain. She had everything: wit, cunning. She's even quite scary when her eyes looked all empty and hollow when Tai and Matt were fighting her in the digital world. She is easily one of the best villains in the Digimon series. Towards the end of the film, you feel for her and you wish she recovers, and once she gets out of prison, she can start her life again, and maybe this time she can really help people in need. Maybe she will team up with Izzy and try to help future Digidestined in the realization that one day you and your partner Digimon would split up, and it will be okay when that happens, because you are lucky enough to be the Digidestined and have a partner Digimon that will stand by your side no matter what. She could do something like that, or she could go off the rails again, but who knows. This film hit hard emotionally, as well as having good humor and a solid double turn right in the middle of the film. You expect a twist, but having Manoa, who was the charming Digimon professor basically, end up being the real villain was beautifully done. And not having some random last minute evil Digimon controlling her was also a nice touch, because usually they always make an excuse for the human villains justifying their evil actions. Ken had the Dark Spore, Oikawa had Myotismon controlling him, so I love the fact that it was all Manoa. There wasn't an external force controlling her horrific actions. This was an epic last adventure for Tai and Matt, and who better to end the original storyline than the main two characters who put Digimon on the map. Thank you for watching this review. We hope you enjoyed it. Join us on our journey in Digimon Adventure 2020 as we discuss crazy theories that may happen in the reboot series, as well as discussion points on the original storyline. So please hit that subscribe button, magical fire, the like button, and turn on the notifications to stay up to date with our content. And as always, care for nothing.